let's start, I guess, at the beginning of last week. We had the latest Super Series titles for Dimitri Vandenberg, Callum Ridds, Rob Cross and Michael Smith. But out of those four players, whose title win most impressed you last week?
Yeah, for all four of them, it was their second title of the season. Three of them, of course, second Pro Tour title as well. For Rob Cross, he also has a major that he won just a few days earlier, but second of all sorts in the PDC for all four of them. As for who impressed me the most, I mean, Rob Cross is the obvious answer, because not just did he win a title, but he was brilliant all week, and he was brilliant the previous weekend, although not as brilliant as he was in the Pro Tours, but pretty darn close in winning the European Championship. And it seems like all he was missing was confidence, and he's not missing that anymore. But if we're talking just the title win itself, just that one day, I'm not going to say Rob Cross, because as good as he was, Dimitri Vandenberg on the first day was just incredible. And it was really Michael Van Gerwen at his best-esque, because it wasn't just, a big performance. It was 7 matches, 6 of which were over the ton. The other, which wasn't that bad, in succession, averaging 103 for the day on the way to the title. The only match where he was under the ton was the match that went to a decider against Vincent Vandevort, who I'll come to in the next question. But that was the only match where he was under a ton. He averaged 98.5. And what did he do in that match? He was 5-3 down, and he averaged nearly 113 over the last 3 legs to turn that one around. That's the only match over the day where he was under a ton. He was over 104 in the last 16 quarterfinal and semifinal, and still averaged a ton against Adrian Lewis in the final, coming again from behind from 4-0 down to win it, winning 8 of the last 9 legs. It was just from start to finish a brilliant day from him, where he played at a level that, as I said, was Michael Van Gerwen-esque from Michael Van Gerwen 4 or 5 years ago. Now, not meaning to compare him to MVG at MVG's best, because MVG at MVG's best not just did this one day, would do this the entire week and win 3 of the 4 and get upset in a last leg decider in the semifinal, averaging 109 the other day. Dimitri Vandenberg didn't follow up at that level over the following 3 days. But that's not what this question asked. It was, whose title win impressed you the most? And it has to be Dimitri, because it was, as I said, a day that very few people have had before, very few will have again since. And it culminated with him lifting the title with 103 average for the day, with his week match still being nearly a ton and 113 over the last 3 legs in that one anyway.
I can't argue with that. It is difficult to pick anyone else from those 4, especially when you just mentioned there what Dimitri Vandenberg did on that first day of the Super Series last week, and the averages, the lowest was just the 98. And as you say, the way he came back in that game against Vincent Vandevort, the 13, 12, 15 dart legs from 5-3 down to win the game. And it wasn't just how well he played, but how well his opponents played as well. Like, okay, you take out his first round game against Boris Koltsov, who, let's give him some credit, he took out 142 in the first leg, but from 2-2, Dimitri pulled away and won that game. But you look at the averages from his opponents: Andrew Gilding, 103, Vincent Vandevort, 97, Chris Dobie, 101, Rob Cross, 103, Kim Huybrechts, his Belgian World Cup teammate, 102, and then Adrian Lewis, 95. So even though he's playing at a top level, he's having to do it against players that are also playing at a top level as well, which makes it even more impressive. But also you factor in as well that Dimitri Vandenberg's not had the best time of it in the last few months since he made the final of the World Match Play. He lost out to Fallon Sherrick. He had that big lead in the World Series, and we had Keith Deller on the show a few weeks ago, and we were talking about that event, and he said, how does Dimitri Vandenberg bounce back from that? Because when you have such a big lead in the semi-final on TV and you've got a chance to win the title that weekend, it can take a while. But he's come back brilliantly, hasn't he, to win the floor title last week, and the way he did it as well. So for me, I can't really look beyond Dimitri Vandenberg, but I will give a mention to the 3 other winners as well. Callum Ridds, his average in the final was 90, but aside from that, it was high 90s, low 100s, and he had a couple of really good comebacks as well. He was, I think, 3-0 down to Jose de Souza, won it 6-4, 3-0 down to Gabriel Clemens in the final, and came back and won that final 8-6. And he's a player that we've spoken quite a bit about this year, because he is starting to really shoot up the rankings, and he's potentially going to be in the top 32 inside 2 years of having his tour card, which not many players are able to do, and especially players at his age as well. We did have our Rob Cross Appreciation Minute on the show last week, and we are going to hear from his manager, Rab Bain, a little bit later on as well. So I'll save the Rob Cross Appreciation for now. But again, great to see him continuing to play well and getting another title, his first floor title since 2018. It's been a little while. He seems to just pick up major titles and doesn't worry about the floor events, but he's got another one under his belt. And then finally, Michael Smith, again, who had a bit of a ropey first round game, but aside from that, performed very, very well for the rest of it. Came for a couple of deciders, and can he get that big title? Well, he's continuing to pick up the floor title, so the confidence should be back heading into these last couple of months.
Now, we talked about those 4 title winners at the Super Series in Barnsley, but did anyone else who might not have been able to cross the line and win one of the 4 events catch your eye?
I've got to say quite a few players that did impress over the 4 days in Barnsley, and I'll start off with when we spoke on our last show, we were looking ahead to this lot of Pro Tour events, the penultimate lot before the cut-off for the World Championship, the Players' Championship finals, and a lot on the line with tour cards, with the spot in those 2 major events at the end of the season. And we were saying which players are going to be able to step it up, push themselves into contention. We saw a couple of players put themselves in provisional spots for the World Championship. Ryan Meikle got to a quarter-final on one of the days, beat some top players on the way, Brendan Dolan, Luke Humphreys, Jason Heaver, another player that's pushed himself into the spots. He's a new tour card holder for this year. And Florian Hempel, who we seem to be talking about quite regularly now on the show, he had that great win against Peter Wright in the European Championship. Probably didn't get as much credit as he deserved for that win, I don't think, because a lot of the talk after the game was how Peter Wright was using a set of darts, which you could probably only describe as coming free with a dartboard from an Argos catalogue, because we've never seen darts like that on TV for a very long time, and didn't perform like we know he can. But Florian got the win on that occasion, and it's a player that he missed quite a lot at the start of the year. He's missed, I think, 12 of the 27 Players' Championships. We've had a lot of them during the first half of the year. He's now starting to play on the tour more regularly, and he's in the World Championship spots. And I think it will be well deserved him to get into the World Championship, considering what he's done these last 4 or 5 months. He has really pushed it on, and he's losing with some big averages as well. 106 average. He lost in the first round one day, lost a 99 average in one of the days as well, but then managed to cap off the week with a run to the semi-finals. So he's going to be heading up the rankings very, very quickly. I think we will see him in the top 64 very soon, and then it's how far can he go? Can he make that top 32? But a player that I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do over the next few months. And one other I'll give a mention to, and a player that I'm sure you've been rooting for this year. He's not had too much luck so far. He's lost a lot of tight games, but Danny Baggish winning his first board of the year on the Players' Championship events, which was nice to see as well.
Yeah, Danny Baggish, I was going to throw him in as the last person I mentioned as well, so might as well start with him as well. He didn't qualify for the World Series event on the Monday, but played well in both his matches. And after struggling the first 2 days, he was in the bottom quarter of the field on each day in terms of his average. Upped it to being in the top quarter for the last 2 days, including, as you mentioned, winning his first board of the season. And I said at the beginning of the year, I thought he was one of those players who was going to need time to find his feet. Well, I couldn't say I was right before this weekend, because who knows if he'll ever find his feet. Some players spend their 2 years on tour without doing it, but this week was the first real signs that he was starting to find his game, starting to be able to play well, and starting to get results. So that did catch my eye. I said I would, though he was the last person I was going to mention. I don't think I'll do everyone else in backwards order. I'll go in the order I was intending for the remainder of the players. I hinted at one of these in the last question, and that's Vincent Vandevort. And he's been very quietly having, well, a good few years now, because after he questionably considered retirement, questionably might have just been saying that the injuries might have been too much and he didn't think he qualified for anything anymore, depending on how you interpret it, what he was saying. Whatever it was, when he lost to Max Hopp at the World Championships a few years ago, it looked like his career was almost done. But he bounced back, and he's made the last 3 world match plays. We don't talk about him that much. But this week was really just one of those weeks, yet again, where he just continued to get results and continued to play well. Was top 20, 25 in averages across the week, with the exception of the second day where he struggled. The other 3 days, he played really well. We mentioned him losing that tough match to Dimitri Vandenberg, but he was the only person who gave Vandenberg a game that day because of how Dimitri was playing. And it was just another one of those weeks that might have been quiet, because you don't, other than a quarterfinal, he didn't go that far, but he won his board twice and reached another board final, and even won a match on the day where he played poorly. That's a good result and a good return for the week for Vincent Vandevort. I have two other players I'll mention. I'll try to get through them quickly. One's a beaten finalist, Ross Smith. Easy to miss just how good Ross Smith is playing because, okay, he made the final, so obviously he's playing well. But he averaged over the last 3 days 100 over a significant number of matches over those 3 days. Not many players can do that. You look last year, over the course of the year, only a couple players averaged 100. Only a couple others, including Devin Peterson, who's been struggling this year, averaged close to the 100 for the year. Ross Smith, though, played at that standard for 3 days, including making another final, his third of his career, to go along with that title. And it's just, he's really looking a top 32 player now, maybe even a top 24. And the last player I'll mention, I started with a Belgian on the last question. I'll end with a Belgian on this one, Kim Huybrechts, qualifying for the World Series event on the Monday, the World Series final, I should say, on the Monday, and then followed it up with yet again, just a really, really good complete week, finishing in the top 12 in averages on 3 of the 4 days and winning a bunch of matches, making a semifinal, winning another board on another day. He entered the week, if you remember back last week, I mentioned he's one of those players who needed a week to make sure he stayed in the field for the World Championships. That's no longer a question. He's no longer a doubt to miss the World Championships. He's no longer a doubt to miss the Players' Championship final. He's now in the provisional field for the match play next year. And playing like he did this past week, you would think he's going to get back there after missing it this year, and I'm missing it 2 of the last 3 years. Obviously, he'll have to keep on from what he did this past week, but this was the best I've seen him play in a very long time. He looked like the player who was a Premier League player a few years ago. And even when he was in the Premier League, he didn't look like a Premier League player. He did before that, but not that year and not since. This is the first time in quite some time he really caught my eye and really looked like the player that we know he is.